What's up, Warriors, and welcome to another episode of the Mental Health Movement podcast, Voice for the Voiceless. I am your host, Chris. Thank you guys so much for joining me on today's podcast. It is May 11th. We are still in Mental Health Awareness Month, and today's special guest we have, he is the host of the Burnt Out podcast. He has been a firefighter paramedic for 47 years. He has quite the story to tell. Please help me welcome Jeff Duer. Jeff, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good, Chris. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on your podcast too, man. I certainly
Yeah,
appreciate it.
man. Thank you for coming on. Whenever we first had our conversation over the phone, I'm like, oh man, this guy's got quite the story to tell. And there's a lot of powerful details in your story that I feel many people of my age group, or even the ages younger than me, or even people around your age that need to hear, the things that you've been through yourself and let them know that they're not alone. So I do greatly appreciate that you're on here today.
No problem. No problem. See what we can do, man.
Yeah, man. So let's start with the podcast. When did you start your podcast? And I love the name because it's just so fitting with your job title.
A buddy of mine, Skip Ackerman, if I pronounce his last name wrong, sorry, Skip. Let's call him Skip anyway. He is a friend of mine I met through the Center of Excellence, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. And he went through similar situations I did, a little more detailed, but he started it in Indianapolis, Indiana, just north of there. And he invited me up back in 2021 to he interviewed me such as we're doing now. And then we got together and just kind of hit it off and started doing podcasts for www.burntoutpodcast.org. And he does a weekly podcast there. I do a weekly live session on Zoom at 1800 hours on Zoom. And if you want to find out, you can go to that link, burnoutpodcast.org, and scroll down. You see my mug up on there, and click on that Zoom link, and it's 1800 hours on Sunday. Everybody's welcome. Join in, pop in.
Perfect. Yeah, man. I would love to definitely hop on the podcast if you guys will have me. That'd be great.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I mean, it's not been real busy here lately like it was over the winter months, but like we were talking earlier, it's summertime. People like to be out
Yeah.
and about. I mean, I love to be out and about, so
Right.
I get it. But there are those people who have answers or have questions that need to be answered, and hopefully we could point them in the right direction, if not answer that question for them too.
Right. Right. So let's go ahead and talk about, you being a firefighter paramedic for 47 years. That's a long time, man. Like I feel in today's generation of people, not too many people stay at a job longer than what, maybe like 6, 7 years. What made you choose a firefighter?
Little boy dream,
Yeah.
little boy dream come true. I mean, I did find out there was a bloodline in my family. It skipped my dad, but it was his dad and his brothers that were the founders of the National Park Volunteer Fire Department in New Jersey. Jersey, that's right, Jersey. And
Enjoy me.
Jersey. I traced the bloodline back to that one too. But man, I was a little kid. I was chasing them on my bike, fire engines and all that stuff. And I joined in Ohio as an explorer. And when we moved to Maryland, I joined the local volunteer fire department in Waldorf, Maryland, which happened to be an extremely busy volunteer fire department. It still is, with a multitude of calls, like over 4,000 calls a year, which is crazy for a volunteer house. But
Yeah.
I liked it. I liked it a lot.
Mhm.
I accelerated. I stayed with them for all these years, stuff too. Promoted up to deputy chief and was that for several years. And then I moved out of Waldorf because I needed to get away from everything for a while. It was just so busy. I found a place down here in the opposite end of the county, out of the Potomac River, which I'm not on the river,
Right.
but it's 1,000 feet from me. I look out my window here and I see it. And I moved down here to get this change of pace. With the wife and I, we got out of a duplex and moved into a single family house on an acre of land with our dogs. So it was
Right.
perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And I'm assuming you have one service dog, or are they both service dogs?
No, just one. Just
Just
one.
one.
Yeah, my female Mika is my service dog. Kuma, he's I call him my sentry.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing gets by him.
Yeah.
um, I do rescue dogs. Yeah, I got the story with Mika. I got her after I got a Center of Excellence. I got her in the 23rd of December from a friend who was offering her up because there was some issues going on there, and she was great. She got a great attention span, so I taught her to do what I wanted her to do for me, and she woke me up several times out of nightmares. Um, she takes her muzzle and puts it under my armpit or my chin, and just wakes me up. And
Wow.
yeah, the first time she did it, it scared the I'm like, we're allowed to cuss on here?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It scared the shit out of me because I didn't know what she was doing. I was in a nightmare, and I don't really remember what it was about, but I remember she was over top of me, pushing me, and I grabbed her by the scruff. We didn't do anything wrong, but it scared the shit out of me because
Right,
100-pound shepherd looking at you is like, what the hell, man?
right.
But yeah, so I taught her to do what I want to do. I take her with me in places, stuff like that too. Last year, we went to the fire department instructor conference with burnoutpodcast.org and made a lot of contacts with thousands of firefighters and stuff throughout the country. And even then,
Yeah,
uh, she was a trooper, man. She was really good. She kept me grounded pretty much all the time. She never leaves my
that's
side.
good.
Yeah, she
What
led.
so what does that training process look like for a service dog? Like, is there specific classes that she has to do to get registered as a service dog, or how does that work?
Well, there's going to be people who would chime in and say that there's no such thing as a emotional support animal that's allowed to do what a service dog does, so on and so forth. And it's true. I taught Mika to deal with the disabilities I have,
Hmm.
and the depression is huge. And she grounds me in that one. Anxiety, she helps with it too. Her brother Kuma chimes in it sometimes. Um, there's no real test that you have to prove unless you get to TSA. You have to do some stuff there too. But there's no card you carry, and it's illegal to ask certain questions about the dog's performance versus your disabilities. There's HIPAA laws there and stuff too,
Right,
and
right.
ADA requirements that have to be met as well. So, yeah, I was reading articles last night about that, and there's a just because you buy a vest online that says service dog does not make your dog a service dog. And I've
Interesting.
read stories about dogs in places like Home Depot or something like that allows animals in there, whether they're service animals or not, and other dogs attacking these animals, and it's
Oh my
crazy.
God.
I mean,
Yeah,
you're the owner of that dog. You are responsible for that dog's actions and behavior. Period.
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm adamant about that, man.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm a dog lover. I foster dogs too. I just gave up a foster I had for about 45 days. A beautiful shepherd got into my heart, but I made a deal with myself. I'm going to save him from the euthanization. He was up several counties up north of me, and they brought him down here for a rescue agency that I work with. And she asked me to foster, and I give a lot of thought because it's kind of hard. And I said, let me do it, man. Let me harden this heart a little bit and set my mission up and do it. And I wanted to do it, and I did it, and it worked out great. I still
Right,
miss him, but it worked out great.
right. Have you had both dogs around the same amount of time, or did you have one before the other?
Uh, well, I lost my boy Max 3 years ago, May 1st. He was my primary dude. But I got Mika because when I got back from the Center of Excellence after spending time in there, the wife had left and she took her dog with it. So Max was by himself. So I wanted to get him a playmate. So I got Mika, and she was the playmate for Max. And then Max got diagnosed with degenerative myopathy, which is a nerve bundle through the spinal column in animals.
Oh
And it's
man.
not treatable. It's
Yeah.
not even treatable, man. I took him to acupuncture. I was doing everything to try to get this guy squared away, and it just wasn't happening.
Right.
So I got Kuma. Kuma was a rescue from the agency I work with too, and he was fully trained and everything, great recall. So I said, okay, I'm going to get him for Mika because I know Mac's going to pass and Mika needs a playmate. I mean, I get a lot of thought on this stuff too, right? There's this thing
Yeah.
as overthinking.
Yeah.
No way. That's a myth. Nobody ever overthinks anything, right?
Absolutely not. Never.
That's, yes, I spent a lot of time doing that. So when Max passes, it was Mika and Kuma left behind for me.
Right.
And
Right. So I mean, all in all, at least she, because I know dogs get like really emotional, even though they can't show it like you and I can when they have a close pet mate that passes away. You do see that on TikTok videos and stuff. That animals are just as sensitive as we are. They just don't know how to. They just can't express it like you and I can.
I saw a definite decrease in her actually increase in her emotions. She laid where Max passed for about 30 days, and
Wow.
she wasn't eating right. She wasn't entertaining anything really. She was bummed out. She was seriously bummed out. She worried me for a little bit there too.
Yeah.
But she still lays in that spot occasionally, goes in there and has her little time. It's been 3 years, but I tell you, she knows and she remembers.
It's crazy to me that, as humans, we're never, when we get into this part of the podcast, that we're not taught how to grieve. But animals, it's kind of like an instinct. Like it's there. They know how to grieve. And it's kind of like second nature to them. Like if it's a litter, or if it's a sibling, or if it's a parent, they know how to grieve. And it's always blew my mind to see animals show that kind of emotion, especially when they capture it on video.
It wrenches my heart, man. It
Yeah,
does. Just because animals. Obviously a big dog lover, and they're just innocent.
yeah,
They really are. And to see them go through something that you're experiencing, and they show it the way they show it, it just really just grabs your heart, man. Just beats the shit
yeah.
out. They're not scripted. They don't.
Mhm.
They don't know right from wrong. They're just doing what they do normally.
Right.
See them react to something like that, man. It's surreal.
Which, kind of brings me to a question. Since, you're a dog lover and you've fostered dogs and you have two dogs of your own, um, what is your viewpoint on, I guess like the public opinion or the internet opinion of pit bulls, because pit bulls are looked at as very aggressive animals and they attack anybody just, uncalled for and all that stuff.
It's
What's your
funny.
opinion on that?
I was talking to some people about that last night. Um, I think pit bulls got have a bad rap because of the way they've been raised. Um, the dog is only as smart as the owner allows it to be. And if you train your dog to be a vicious dog, it's going to be a vicious dog. And if you train your dog to be subtle, um, and able to be socialized and stuff like that, then that dog will be like that too. So pit bulls, I think, have got a bad rap because of the way they've been brought up and the
Right,
way they're introduced. They were introduced as a violent, mauling dog, and
right,
where German shepherds and stuff have been introduced, decades as a working dog and a social dog that gets along great with families and does a great job as a working dog too. So I
right,
think it's all about how they were brought into it. I know there's county north of me, Prince George County, that has absolute outlawed pit bulls are illegal to own.
right.
And I just think that's kind of
That's
crazy.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you just chastise a breed just like that. But you remember, I don't know how old you are. I'm 30. So, but Doberman pincers were the dog when I was growing up that
Right.
they would turn on you and they will attack you. Well, as studies came out along and behold that the actual problem was the dog got cornered. And when a dog, any animal gets cornered, including human
Right.
beings, for animals too, you're gonna either fight or flight.
Right.
And if you can't flight, you're gonna fight.
Yeah.
And that's what came down to. But I think dogs get a bad rap because of the owners, the way they're brought
Yeah.
up and stuff too.
And it's kind of the same way with, people's kids. Whenever, you see overly violent kids, because we do see that, and it boils down to parenting. So why can't we have that same conversation about dogs?
Yeah,
And
that's a great point, Chris, because my alarm bell ringing now. Um, when you bring your kids up bad, it shows. It comes out in the long run. And
right,
how it comes out, it shows up. And the same thing with the dog, but the dog is not going to wait till you get a chance to do something wrong. They're going to do it whenever opportunity presents itself. Um, and you're right. That's a good analogy with the children. You bring them up the same way. Yeah. Dogs have the mentality of a 2-year-old. So
right,
if you work with that and focus on that, and it makes things better. Now, I took time, studied about dogs and stuff like that too over the past several years. And dogs got rules. They have
right,
rules among themselves. And if you kind of understand the pack rules and how it's developed, and it makes things a lot easier to train them and a lot easier to work in because you understand what's happening here. And we don't have that training with our children and stuff like that. We're brought up to think, well, you automatically know how to raise children,
right.
But there's no test, there's no book to read, no videos that make it happen. So
Mhm. Yeah,
it's
and it's just, I feel, with social media being the way that it is, and people, will sit there and call out, dog owners, and people won't call out parenting, like bad parenting. And then these kids grow up to break the law and be like, oh, well, they went through a rough household. And it's like, okay, so are we going to hold them accountable still, or are we still just going to blame the parents? Because at some point, when that kid gets old enough to be able to make the decision between right and wrong, sure, the parent is a huge factor in why the kid acts that way. But it's kind of like an accountability thing. Same with dogs. Why are we not holding the owners responsible? And why are we not holding the parents responsible? You know what I mean? And it always blew my mind. Like I know so many pit bull owners, and I think almost, if not every single one of them, uh, none of them are aggressive, and some of them will just be like overly jumpy. And again, I think that's just a training thing, and just training your dogs not to jump on people.
Mhm.
But I don't know any of my friends who own a pit bull that have just attacked people just because.
Yeah, no, no. Dogs have to be provoked somehow, some way to
Right,
do that, or commanded to do
right.
that. It's not the dog's normal mentality is not to just go attack anything that's moving.
Mhm.
That has to be that has to be sewn into them to respond to that too. I mean, natural instincts, chasing a rabbit, stuff like that too. Yeah, sure, that's part of their instincts, but to actually go after people and whatnot, no, no.
And you know, it kind of reminds me of, and I know this was like a meme for many of years. The Harambe, the ape that killed that
Oh,
kid,
yeah.
and they're like, oh, you know, we're gonna kill we're gonna kill the ape because he killed the kid. I'm like, okay, like I understand what the animal did was wrong. You know, I'm not saying that it's okay that it killed a kid, but it's an animal. Before anything else, it's an animal. You're in its habitat. What the hell do you think is going to happen?
Limited habitat,
Right,
very limited
exactly.
habitat. Yeah, and that's the
And it's
same thing.
like,
You do. SeaWorld, a killer whale kills a trainer. Okay, so what have we learned here? We have a killer whale that just killed a trainer, and we're going to kill the whale.
right,
Yeah, we already coined it as a killer, so now we're going to kill it because someone coined it as.
exactly.
Doesn't make sense to me. And yeah, Harambe was terrible, man. I mean, all them jokes going through Facebook stuff were sad, but
Yeah,
damn it, they were funny too. But
right.
yeah, that whole thing with animals killing something and then you kill the animal that killed that, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't
Like
make
in
sense.
some circumstances, I understand when a dog or animal has to be put down because they are overly aggressive, and even if the trainer or the owner happens to be really good or whatever, some animals just, you know, have like something wrong up top and, you know, they do attack unprovoked. I have seen dogs like that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we shouldn't just say, "Oh, well, it's just this breed of dogs." You know,
Yeah.
my brother got attacked by a Rottweiler for no reason. He was sitting on the couch and the dog just lunged at him and grabbed his eyebrow. You know, it happens, you know, and I don't think the dog should be put down, but I also think that it needs to be closely watched too.
Well, I'll probably create a lot of static by saying this. If we're going to put animals down for killing people, why aren't we putting people down for killing
I
people?
1000% agree with you because we're in this really weird culture where people do horrific things, and either a they're being let right go. We've seen that in certain cities where they're let right go for doing what they do, but we'll sit there and spend people's tax dollars for, you know, murderers, and they'll sit there for years and years and years before they're put down. And you know, you look at a guy like I think Charles Manson is probably the best example. He didn't quote unquote kill somebody, right? But he sat in prison for how long? Decades.
Yeah.
You know, in that whole time, they could have just put him down. So I don't understand this mentality of A, the lack of accountability, and B, not holding people responsible for their actions. You know,
I'll give you a scenario. You
mhm.
don't know this scenario. My daughter was killed in 2016. She was shot right to the heart by a felon who was released out of prison in 2009 from a murder that he used in the commission of using a firearm. And he got released because of technicality that surfaced. So, you know, he got out again. And then he went and committed another murder and shot another individual in that process too. So he's sitting in Maryland courts, 165 years plus life. I don't know what the hell that really means, but why?
Right.
He's killed two people, and shot a third, and he's never going to be any benefit to society at all, at all. And yeah, sure, I'm biased because he killed my daughter. Um, I'm not going to say what I was just about to say. But to me, he didn't deserve to be catered to 3 times a day, 3 hots in a cot and a
I
shower.
agree. I agree.
Yeah, of course, I'm biased, but he should never had the opportunity to kill another individual.
I 100% agree. And you know, again, like I was just saying, there are other cities that have let people who have killed other people go. You know,
Mhm.
for God's sake, we had Casey Anthony get away with killing her kid. Whether or not that's true,
Yeah.
I think it's true, but I think she did it.
Yeah.
Um, and in regards to your daughter, man, like I couldn't possibly say sorry enough for your loss, man. I
Uh,
could not imagine. Um,
yeah.
if you feel comfortable me asking this question, did you go to the court date like when that whole thing happened?
I went to the sentencing. I did not go
Mhm.
to the fact finding because I didn't want to hear that.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
not going to lie. My daughter was in a very bad part of the world. She was
Right.
in that underground type thing in the drugs. There's all sorts of speculations on there too. And I didn't want to hear that. All I
Yeah.
knew was what had happened. He shot her and killed her. So I made sure I was there for the hearing. And we locked eyes. Who, I don't know how long, but we locked eyes, and man, I had so much hate inside of me. I was just, oh, I couldn't talk for like, I don't know, half hour after. I just couldn't even
Yeah.
talk.
I'm sure.
I wanted his ass so bad, man.
Right.
And
Did they give you an opportunity to say anything to him? Like,
did
if
wouldn't, I'm
you
glad. Yeah, I wouldn't say anything to him. He didn't deserve to hear my voice.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. He saw me. He looked in my eyes. He knows what I was. I know he knows what I was thinking.
right,
I wanted his heart in my hands, man. I wanted him. And yeah, what gives him the right to do that, man? To anybody.
right. Yeah. And I know shortly after her passing, like how did you cope with that, man? Like I know we kind of grazed over it a little bit before the phone call, man, but like how did you get through with that, not knowing how to grieve properly just yet before we get to that part of the story? Um, how did you grieve her loss?
I don't know. Um, there's so many things that go through your mind when that happens. Lots of questions, and they all start with why. Um, but then latter part of it, you come down and we start feeling extremely vulnerable.
Yeah,
I mean, it's on getting closer to home, really. And that feeling itself is uncomfortable, especially with this dude who's running around the streets.
right,
Nobody was stuff like that, man. And obviously they finally caught him, but there were just so many questions I don't have the answers to and won't have the answers to. How did I deal with it? Well, I had to deal with the ex-wife, which was an absolute trip. Um, and making funeral arrangements for my daughter. I was just pressed. I think autopilot just really kicked in.
yeah, yeah.
I really don't remember sitting anywhere crying and unloading. I don't remember doing that.
That's the hardest part too, man, is not being able to really like express just how much that loss hit you. And before I lost, in 2020 was the first really big loss that I ever had before my brother. And the year leading up to my brother passing away, my brother ironically was helping me grieve her. And when he passed away, luckily I was already in therapy and I already knew how to grieve. I knew how I wanted to grieve, but man, his death, I think, probably hit me harder than anybody else because he saved my life. We didn't really discuss this before, before we started recording, but I've had two attempts. One was at 14 years old, and the second time was at 27. And the second one, I was living in New Jersey at the time. I was there for just about a year. I had a whole note written out on everything, and I had the means. I was done. I couldn't do it anymore. I was dealing with a really toxic parent. My mom and I don't really have a relationship anymore because it's gotten so bad we can't have a conversation. And the day that I wrote the note, for some reason, and I think it was a cry for help more than it was anything else, I posted it on Facebook, and I don't know why I did that. I still to this day don't understand why I did it. As soon as I posted it, 5 minutes go by, I'm sitting here reading it, just like processing it. It's just like, why am I doing this? Am I really wanting to do this? Like, why? Just like you said, the first word of every question starts with why. And I deleted it like 5 minutes later. And first person who called was Santi. He called me and he's like, "Hey man, I just wanted you to know, I saw what you posted. I saw that you deleted it, and I just want you to know that I love you and I care about you. And God told me to reach out to you, and God wanted me to make sure that you're okay, and I want you to know that you're not alone. And the second person who called me is my now tattoo artist. She basically said along the same line of what he said. And to this day, man, it's surreal because it doesn't feel like it ever happened. I feel like I could pick up my phone and talk to him right now. You know, if you could say anything to your daughter right now, like any way that you could, what would that be?
Mm, I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah, I don't know. Um, I would start with I'm sorry.
Yeah. And I feel like the weight behind the I'm sorry holds so much too, because of how heavy her loss was for you and how it happened. So, like I said, man, I can only imagine how you felt looking into the man who did its eyes. Never mind feeling how you felt when she passed.
I never
Um,
in my life and haven't since
yeah,
that my job is to go out and save lives.
right,
And I was just more like thinking if I had an hour with this guy, what I would do.
right.
I
How did
wouldn't.
how did your job handle that situation? Like, did they give you time off
Yeah,
or
I took some time. I had to take some time.
yeah,
Um, yeah, that was a shock. It really was, and I didn't really know how to respond. I never had to really deal with. I never had to deal with this thing so close. I mean, grandparents, yes, have passed, but yeah, this is my blood.
yeah,
And
yeah,
this is my daughter, my only daughter.
right.
Um, and now she's gone in such a violent manner. And
Hmm.
it was a lot of work to try to keep her from going down that road. And we talked about parents raising a child. Once they become 18, if you haven't got your P's and Q's lined up by then, man, you're probably not going to have them lined up because you're going to have enough peer support around her, peer pressure rather, from other people and stuff in that road she went down. Um, and you can only do so much.
Yeah,
And it's not a cop out; it's the reality of it. The world the way it is now is, it's easy for our kids to fall into a rut and not be able to get out. And I think that goes to parts of the broken marriage were part of it too. Um, so they don't really know what avenue to travel to,
right.
and it's tough because it happens. Unfortunately, happens every day to other people's children and stuff too. And it just I don't even know. I just totally lost all thought. I just lost all thought, man.
Yeah, I mean
Damn, pulling the brain.
I feel like it's a hard subject to stay on track with because it's like your brain wants to combat those negative thoughts with positive thoughts, and just trying to wrap your brain around just the whole situation itself, man. I totally understand.
Yeah, you've this happened in 2016, so it's been a minute, 7 years
Yeah,
this
right.
year. And I think the part of it that really bothers me is, she died and I was trying to press through with that, really not knowing how to grieve, but knowing that there was a situation here that required attention. And I kept myself busy
Right.
doing that. And I'm sure I found other things to do too. Um, I was in college still too, so I kept going to my college classes too. I did skip one class on purpose when we were talking about shootings, and I didn't want to go to that one.
Yeah, geez, man. I couldn't imagine that that trigger, man, because
Yeah,
I feel like that's something that's definitely not talked about enough is, people not knowing how to handle their triggers. And I feel like at the time, not knowing how to grieve, handled that potential trigger fairly well. Because I feel most people that are kind of like in the first stages of grief or, just like their journey from healing, don't really know how to approach those triggers.
I didn't know really know what triggers were at
Right.
that point in time. I'll give you a quick background. I'm this guy. I've got a job, nice job. I'm a chief officer for a busy company, and a paramedic, disc jockey too. I got a nice house, had a beautiful wife, dogs. Had a dream going. Everything was great. Everything seemed to be going fine. And then all of a sudden, boom. I mean, boom. It just got on the rug got ripped out from underneath me like super fast. And preceding that, my dog died after 11 years, which was traumatic as hell. People say, "Oh, it's just a dog." Well, if that's what you say, it's just a dog, then we
It's a
could never be
family
friends.
member.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we could never be friends because it's more than just a dog.
Right.
So Champ passed, and then my daughter passed the following July, and went to court on October 17th when they finally got the dude, heard the sentencing. Got a phone call from a friend that my dad was taken to the hospital in the county south of me, and I called him to find out what's going on, and went down there. He had a tumor at the bottom of his esophagus that was just found out. They gave him about 3 to 6 months to live. Well, he passed November 3rd. And that sucked.
Yeah.
That was bad. Yeah, that was bad. That was my dad. And 8 weeks later, my mom dies.
Ugh,
So I just told my dad about what was going on with my daughter's killer,
right.
and you faced with this news. So the emotional roller coaster was in play. Just get done taking care of things with my dad and whatnot, and my mom takes a turn, and she passes. And I
How
was
did
like,
she pass away?
she died from congestive heart failure.
Oh my God.
She had been in a nursing home for several years prior to that with complications due to multiple sclerosis. Um, yeah, that night was bad. I mean, I knew I could help her, and I knew I could temporarily fix her. Um, she just had to give me the word, and we had a living will, as you would call it, as a DNR. And I said, "Mom, I can fix you. Just tell me what you want, if you want me to or not." And she said right out, "No, Jesus is waiting for me." And how do you respond to that?
I was gonna say, man, I just got goosebumps. How do you even reply to that?
Uh, I told her, I said, if you change your mind, let me know. I'm right here. And my sister and her family and my wife and I sat there, and it seemed like hours and hours and hours, but it wasn't. Just a few hours, and watched her leave. Um, that sucked.
Yeah.
It really hurt. Mm,
And that was 8 weeks after your father passed away?
yeah, yeah.
Jesus. So then shortly after she passed away, um, how man, how did you cope with your parents' loss? Because like that's another heavy hitter in such a short amount of time.
I don't know. I don't know if I did it well or not.
Yeah,
Um, honestly, it took about a year, maybe closer to 2 years for it to really, really sink in that
right.
your
Mhm.
parents are gone and they're never coming back. The ones you can call at any time of day or night, or they can call you anytime of day or night. And you run stuff by them and get this and get that. That number's not going to be answered anymore.
Yeah,
And these are the two people that know you more than anybody knows you.
right.
And now it's just my sister and I. And like I said,
You and your sister close?
I wouldn't say that. Um, we're closer now than what we were,
Hmm.
but prior to that, no.
Right.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so we've got a lot closer since our parents passed. Yeah. And there's some other stuff going on too. But yeah, shit. I don't know what to say right now, bro. I'm just kind of trapped up right now.
Yeah, I mean it's essentially a free fall before you started being able to get up. You had a lot thrown on your back, and on top of another traumatic situation that happened with your wife. Like if you're ready for that part of the conversation, it's
Yep. In 2019, I had what I call I hit rock bottom. And it's
Right.
that point in time when I discovered rock bottom has a basement, which is just as cold and as dark as you could possibly imagine.
Right.
And there are no windows. And I think that's when everything started calculating up, adding up. And I had a lot of time when I moved down here from a busy town to this town. We
Hmm.
didn't do much down here, and I had too much time to think. There were some issues that I was feeling from the wife, um, and that kind of capsulated, that kind of impacted me as well. Now I feel like I'm losing my wife. Now I've lost everything. And when I got checked into the Center of Excellence in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, it's a center for mental and substance abuse for union members in fire and EMS. So I got in there and spent 43 days in there doing, we don't call it therapy, we call it programming, where they teach you how to deal with your triggers, how to deal with, well, that's when I found I didn't know how to grieve, and the anxiety and depression, PTSD, all those letters and stuff come up after that. How to deal with these things now and how to face them forward instead of trying to dodge them. Um, that was a lot. That was a lot to learn, and I learned an incredible amount about myself through that short time. And when I came home, this new bag of tools. Had to conquer the world again, right? And I walk in the house, and the house is half empty, and the wife had vacated. She took what she needed to take, and she left me what I needed to have behind too, which was fine. I have everything I needed. But the little Christmas tree in the corner all lighted up too. That was a little bit rough. But yeah, so now I'm dealing with these new box of tools I have now, but I don't know how to apply them because now I have another task ahead of me where I am now alone,
Right.
100% alone. Just me and
Right.
my dog, Max, at that time. Um, that was it. And I didn't drink. I was afraid to drink. I was scared to death to drink. And eventually I would drink, but I quit March 10th of 2021. Yeah. Yeah, I quit then. Yeah. And I haven't had drop alcohol since. And I did it on my own. I had succumbed to an injury, not succumbed, I'm sorry. I had become a victim of an injury August 20th. And I tore my right knee out while I was working the medic unit. And as a result, here it is now, May 11th, 2024. I am still out of work
Right.
from that knee injury. I've had two replacements through the same knee. And
Jesus.
it's a work in progress. So I'll tell you, the struggle is real. And
Yeah.
I get back on the road, man. I start doing my job again, doing calls. Blah, blah, blah. Life is good. Working my ass off. I'm making money. I'm happy. And then this knee thing happens. Boom.
Right.
And I thought I'd be back in service in 4 or 5 months. I mean, it's a medial meniscus. It's nothing difficult about that. It happens all the time. But 83 days, 84 days after diagnosis is when I did the first surgery. So there's a lot of damage that happened in the 83 days. And the first surgery was a failure. The second one was a failure. The first replacement was wrong. And last November, I had the second replacement put in there.
Jesus.
So it's all this time sitting at home. I can't go out and do my DJing job because workman's comp frowns on that. It's like they're paying you lots of money when they're not paying you squat.
Right.
It's 2/3. Well, yeah, 2/3 of your salary, but you're making your average when you got hurt. And sure, you don't have any taxes in it, but you don't really have squat either.
Right.
So
Right.
things have been tough. Things have been really, really tough.
So let's backtrack a little bit. So you're leaving the program, come home to an empty house, right? So we're basically on the brink of the pandemic, and you got hurt just before the pandemic was
Yeah,
starting, right?
I forgot about
So
that.
so you have these new bags of tools. You know how to properly grieve. How did you apply those tools, I guess, going through these last 3 years? Because, I feel with mental health, I feel like it was like an all-time really bad during the pandemic. We had a lot of overdoses. We had a lot of people taking their lives. That's obviously a statistic that hasn't gone down in the last couple of years. But how did you cope with that, man? Like, how did you apply those tools that you were given after your program?
I didn't. Um, I got
It's
quarantined.
13 hours.
I got quarantined twice. That was me. I'm sorry. I
Oh,
got
you're okay.
quarantined twice from being exposed, but never got COVID. Although I had all my PPE on, like supposed to, like too. But when you work with somebody who's a critical patient, your safety glasses fog up and you can't see how you're administering drugs or putting IVs in and stuff like that. I took my glasses off so I could see. Well, bam, I got exposed. So 14 days, boom. And that sitting at home was horrible
Yeah.
because everything's shut down. Even the river was shut down. The hell, the river. But and it was nothing to do, nothing to do. And that's when I started drinking. I made the perfect orange crush. It was beautiful. I signed up to this company on the webs called the Whiskey Ball, I think it was. And I was tasting all these flavorful whiskeys and stuff. And
Right.
I was having a hoot. They delivered to the door. How much better can that get? Um, yeah, so I acquired a taste for whiskey, and then problems came up with a job and my disability to the point where they said, you either need to do this or we're going to do that, which meant termination. I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah, I got hurt in a job and you're going to terminate me. Well, I was forced to go to communications. I told them I wasn't qualified for communications, which I wasn't. And 1 year after the probation, I don't even know I was on, they let you go. Now I figured it all out. It's all good now because if they would have fired me, but they would, I've invested, they would have to pay all this shit.
Right.
So it's better to get them in there, set them up, fire them. I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just been if you think it's over, it's never over.
Never over.
Yeah.
It's always battle. If you think you're on top, you got more to climb.
Right. Right.
And so now that we're in 2024, you've gone through the replacements, you've gone through the injuries and the grief and divorce and everything. So where are you at with life now? Like, are you at peace with everything that's gone on, or are you just still trying to figure out, where, uh, I guess, where life has its place for you right now?
I focus on me.
Hmm.
Life is good. The disability still is a hampering problem because it is a problem. It is a
Yeah.
problem. I don't know if I'll ever be able to be a paramedic firefighter again. Um, my knee's not ready. I don't even know if I can run yet because it's not up to that place yet, to that point. But it seems to be coming along. And then after that, that's the big question. What happens after this? Where am I going to get ready? I go to the end of the month for independent medical evaluation where they just decide whether I'm okay to go back to work or not.
Right.
And it's somebody who knows nothing about me, just reading the stack of paper that's been generated prior to that. So we'll see how that goes. Am I able to go back to work right now? No. No, it'll work. My leg will be good for like an hour at 3, depending on what I do with it. And then it starts really aching and swelling up again.
Right.
So, and it's only been 5 months.
Yeah.
So it's
Fairly
it
normal.
takes about 18 months for it to heal.
Hmm.
Do I want to get back out of work? Oh my gosh, I miss it so bad, man. It sounds
Yeah.
crazy, but that's all I've done.
I was gonna say 47 years, man. I don't blame you for missing it. That was your life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I enjoyed it. I mean,
Hmm.
you don't go to paramedic school just because. You
Right.
know, that's a pretty good dedication to go to that class and learn that stuff too. I mean, it takes
Right.
about 2 years, but and getting out there and applying it is really where it's at.
Yeah.
I wanted to be that guy. I wanted to make the difference. To when I was I was either deputy or captain. I can't remember. I was on a call and I saw a paramedic did some stuff, and it wasn't up to my par.
Right.
Well, I can't really do a whole lot about this because I'm not that level of training, and that's one reason why I decided to become a paramedic because I wanted to, for one, and I wanted to know right from wrong. I wanted to be able to correct these issues too,
Yeah.
and I did. So there was that thing too. I mean, there was a lot of good things about coming to paramedic. Yeah. Um,
Takes a special kind of person to work those kind of jobs, I feel.
yeah. I mean, yeah. Did you
Just
get
in terms
counts?
of like the traumatic things that you witness, you know what I mean? Like on top of what you've gone through yourself already. Like I couldn't imagine treating the people that you had to treat.
That's funny that you mentioned that because when I did have that bottoming out in
Hmm.
October of 2017,
Right.
there were calls from way past and near future that came to play that
Hmm.
just resurfaced out of Pandora's box. Um, I do remember that would start freaking me out because they've been dormant for a long, long time, and some calls I forgot I even knew about, and they showed themselves, and they weren't the good calls, of course, yeah, the bad ones, and yeah, things just started messing with me in a wild manner, man. It's really kind of hard to explain, but when it was hitting the fan, it just a lot,
Right.
and I joked about the overthinking earlier. Well, that's the reality of it, because then you start thinking about why this is happening. Why am I having these nightmares or these thoughts, stuff like that? And it just goes and goes and goes. And you got to know when a point in time is enough is enough. I need help.
Yeah.
That is the hardest thing to do for me. It was to say, hey, I need help, because
Yeah.
I was King Kong, man.
Right.
You can't fuck with this, and
Yeah.
one bad and bad. You can't mess with this, but looking back at it now, King Kong died in every movie,
Right.
but
Right.
I didn't, so I'm not King Kong. Not, I don't know what I'm just Jeff. That's what I tell everybody.
Just Jeff. I love it.
Just Jeff.
It's a good plug. It's a good plug. um, I feel, whenever I tried to apply for a 911 dispatcher, they had the psychological test and everything. And, some of the questions on there, ask you, have you ever been suicidal? Have you ever, do you have depression? Do you go to therapy and all that stuff? Of course, I was honest. I couldn't lie just to get a job, even if I tried to. And, of course, they turned me down because of that. And I understand, dispatcher job is, you hear a lot of really rough calls, especially with minors and stuff. And shortly after that, I remember going through a therapy session, and I was telling her about it, and she's like, "Well, if you could retake that test, would you change your answer?" I'm like, "Probably not. I don't get anything out of lying. It doesn't matter how much that paycheck may or may not be. I would never lie, especially at a job like that, because other people's lives are essentially in your hands."
Mm-hmm.
And shortly after that, I started volunteering with the crisis text line. And the very first night, I had a conversation with a minor who was going through abuse. And when I tell you, I don't think I've ever experienced anything as rough as that conversation was, man. Because I was that kid at one point in my life going through shit like that. And I think that whole thing, that conversation was like 2 hours, and trying to talk them down out of what they were trying to do, and had to get one of the managers, I guess is what they're called, or like head counselor or whatever. They had to get involved because police had to be called and stuff like that. But yeah, man, I couldn't imagine being directly involved like you were as a paramedic, especially if you have to go to a scene like that, man. It's just it's hard for me to digest exactly what paramedics, what firefighters, what dispatchers all have to deal with. Police officers too, they have that live PD show, and you see what some of these officers have to put up with, and it's just like, man, I feel we're in a really weird, hateful society where it's okay to trash these men and women that put their lives at risk. I mean, essentially you put your life at risk too. You don't know what the deal is with the scene. You don't know what's going to happen when you get there. So I'm sure the overthinking definitely played a heavy part in your job.
It did, and it didn't happen during the job as much as it did on the ride home.
Right, right,
The ride home, when you start recanting these calls, these bad calls, or you may have a great shift too. Maybe just run 3 or 4 runs. Suppose you
right.
in 20. Um, but yeah, laying down thinking about it, your day you had or whatever, or you hear a call that you like, man, I remember running that call like that too. Stuff you just revisit them too. But yeah, the police officers out there now, man, I couldn't do that job.
Yeah,
But as a paramedic, I mean, any paramedic listening to this too, even a firefighter for that, we put on bulletproof vests more in the past 5, 6 years than we have our entire careers, because scenes are not safe or there's a potential of being shot. Who would have thought
right,
that? You're going to
right.
shoot a fireman, a paramedic? You're going to shoot them? Why? It doesn't make sense, but that was the reality of it. So,
So, kind of like a side question on that. How do you feel, because your daughter was taken away from you the way that she was. What is your viewpoint on guns? Because I feel that's a topic that it's a hot topic right now. It's, do we have too little gun laws? Is there enough? Like, what is your viewpoint on
our
guns?
gun laws suck.
Yeah.
They suck.
Okay.
Um, let's enforce the laws we already have instead of
Mhm.
recreate laws.
Right.
I mean, convicted felon is not allowed to have a gun.
Right.
But how many times do you pick up a paper or hear in a news story that this person was previously convicted of crime, yet they still have a firearm? And
Right.
whether it's a ghost gun or one that's filed down, it still remains the same. They have a
Mm,
firearm.
mm,
That's where I think it needs to be taken down to, is the illegal obtaining of these firearms for these people who shouldn't have them.
right.
Um, I think everybody should have the Second Amendment, you right to bear arms. I do exercise that right. Um, I don't think it's right to put people in a position where they have to go do this, go do that, go do this, to get a license, to say you have this and all that kind of
Right.
crap, when your Second Amendment has that already spelled out to you, the right to bear arms, period. But gun control, I think the laws we have now are horrible. And I think we need to roll back and enforce the ones that we previously done, focus on those, get
Right.
those laws polished up, and then revisit new ones, because they're just chasing. I feel like we're chasing our tail with gun laws.
Yeah. But you look at cities like Chicago, you look at cities like New York City, who have arguably the strictest gun laws that we have in the country. But somehow gun violence is still at an all-time high in Chicago. And violence, we've seen how bad New York City is right now. And I try to stay away from this conversation, but just for the simple fact that I know you and I, we've talked this long already. I know we can have a civil conversation about it without it, turning into a heated debate. Because I don't feel like there's ever a need for a heated debate unless it gets personal, which it
Right.
won't. But I feel like you look at states like Florida, you look at states like Texas, which I believe Texas is open carry, I believe,
I think so.
and
Yeah, I believe so.
yeah, and Florida is constitutional carry now. Um, and people were saying, "Oh, well, when Florida does that, it's going to turn everything, nasty." And I haven't heard of a shooting happening since it happened, so I don't know if it's working. Whatever. Either way, I think that the stricter gun laws conversation, I don't think that's going to make much of a difference, because a criminal is going to get a gun regardless of what laws are put in there. But at the same time, I do think there are people that can get access to a gun that shouldn't have access to a gun. The red flags are always there. You look at Parkland, that kid was on a watch list. He was expelled. There was so many red flags there that it did nothing about. So it's a hard conversation, because it's like I'm not a lawmaker. I'm not in that kind of you know uh position in my life to really speak on it. I can only speak from experience. Are there specific cities that I will travel with my Glock? Absolutely, because I know it's bad city. But I also don't feel like I need to carry it on me 24/7 either, because I feel safe in Florida, opposed to going to some place like Illinois that I don't know, that I know
Mhm.
has high gun violence. And it's crazy to me when a shooting does happen and it's immediately, okay, we need to ban guns. I'm like, okay, let's take guns away from people for a second. Let's just create that scenario. You take guns away from people that know how to handle guns properly, that got it legally, then what? They can't protect themselves against criminals.
Right.
And we recreate what's been going on for the last 50 years, and Chicago is going to become the entire country. And it's just kind of like social media adds to that outrage. And it's so hard to have a civil conversation about this, because it's like, oh, well, you're okay with gun violence. The UK banned their guns. Okay. But look what's going on in UK. It's
How's
not
that working? Yeah. How's that
right.
working? Yeah.
Exactly. And
Well,
it's just
you and I, we have weapons to protect ourselves,
right.
and that's different. But these convicts who have weapons already know they're not allowed to have them, but went ahead and breaking the law even more so, jeopardizing their probation, where it may be, to carry a firearm, not to protect themselves.
Right.
They're
Right.
going to go out and do some, make a claim as to what their fame may be, or somebody did them wrong, like the dealer that shot my daughter. She allegedly owed him
Yeah.
$500. What
Right.
the? 500. What does that? Is a life worth that? But it's still, he wasn't supposed to have them. So, right, I don't believe the gun control laws are for the law-abiding citizen like us. I think
Right.
it's the criminals that are already out there. They're going to get guns. You can print them up on a printer now, for crying out loud.
Right.
Make a 3D gun, which are legal, but they still happen. So, ah, it's a mess.
Yeah. Yeah. I felt like, that kind of played into the mental health thing, because I feel that there are a lot of mentally ill people in this country, and I feel way too many of them have access to those said guns. that shouldn't have access to them. Um, with that being said, I ask all my guests this before I close out every podcast, and your story has been incredibly powerful. So, what is one thing that you would change on the mental health community
The
to
stigma,
improve?
the
Stigma.
stigma, stigma.
Okay.
Whether it's out in general public or with the fire EMS service, you know, when I grew up in a fire service, you talked about your emotions or how you felt on a call. You were told keep that shit quiet, deal with it, and
Wow.
that was the way it was back then too. The word hazing wasn't even created yet,
Hmm.
but here it is now. But things were different back then. 30 years. Um,
Has that culture improved? Do you feel like?
yes and no. Yes and no. Um, I lost my thought again, Chris. There it goes again.
It's okay. Um, it was just about the culture of the mental health and firefighter paramedic.
Yeah, the stigma has definitely got to go. Um, we're human beings and we're
Yeah.
designed to do things A to B, A to Z. And when things jump in the middle like that, like a succession of deaths or traumatic events
Yeah.
that come, in rapid succession, um, we're human
Yeah.
and see human beings in apparel or I don't want to get graphic, but in a manner that we're not accustomed to, it's going to have a
Right.
toll on you. And people need to be receptive of that. We all have emotions, we all have feelings. And if the individual's having problems with that, then work with them instead of against them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it could be you. And it should have happened to me. So it can happen. It can honestly, in my world, it can happen to anybody.
Yeah.
Not that I'm not bulletproof for lack of a better term, but I never thought it would happen to me. And when it did, I just upset everything I had. I mean, everything. My whole world got flipped,
Right.
literally. And shit, I was 56 when that happened. And I know I lied. I said I was 30. But
You're looking day over 25. You're fine.
yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. This is all those this gray down here. I've been laying out in the sun, so that's what happens here. But it happened to me. It can happen. It's happened to many, many people, and some,
Right.
unfortunately, a lot of people have not made it this far. They made that choice to make a permanent decision on a temporary problem,
Right.
and that would be suicide. And
Right.
that is not the answer.
Hmm.
To me, suicide is selfish.
Okay.
Um, you're taking your problems and you're casting them onto others. And your
Fair,
situation,
absolutely fair perspective too.
yep. Although temporary situation, you just made a permanent decision
Hmm.
that you cannot reverse. You
Right.
cannot say, "Oh, damn, I screwed up,"
Right.
and remove those pills out of your stomach or remove that bullet out of that gun. However means it is, um, you cannot change that around. There are so many people, myself, you, and a multitude of people you could reach out to and talk to them. You could call 988, the new suicide prevention number, and talk to somebody professionally on that end. There are just so many tools out here.
And
But
that's the thing too, man. Like I really appreciate your perspective on suicide because I feel so many people are afraid to have that conversation. It's, again, stigma, it's taboo to talk about suicide, it's taboo to talk about mental health. Um, Me personally, who has gone through two attempts, it's one of those conversations, and I say this as much as possible, it shouldn't be delegated to just a month of awareness. It should be an everyday conversation. And that doesn't mean be morbid every single day and acknowledging that there's X amount of people dying and taking their lives every day. But if we can have conversations like this every single day and we can let these people know that we know are struggling, maybe, just maybe, we can make an impact on lowering those suicide numbers because they are astronomical right now.
they're ridiculous. They are ridiculous. Um, I've attempted suicide and not proud of it at all. At all. Um, I'm glad I didn't succeed. Absolutely glad I didn't succeed because, for one, we wouldn't be here having this conversation. But there's just so
Right.
much stuff that's happened since my last attempt. And it really wasn't an attempt. I think it was an absolute cry for help. And I ran out of
Mhm.
options and I was freaking out, mentally freaking out. And I'm not saying bouncing off walls, running like crazy, man. It's just my mind was spun out.
Yeah.
Overthinking doesn't even come close to what I was doing. That's nothing. I
You're
was way past.
spiraling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
way past that. And you know, you are not Superman, and I am not King Kong, and we are susceptible to things from the outside that can affect us on the inside.
Right.
And you need to be aware of these things. And when they start first bothering you, when they first start bothering you, that is not the time to ignore it. That is the time to address it. And grab whatever you got to grab in your body, make that move, and go get some help.
Yeah.
Um, it's not easy. It's the hardest thing I ever had to do. And when I left my house to go to the center that day, I remember seeing my house in the rearview mirror, wondering when I want to see it again, what's going to be like when I get back, yada yada. I had all these stupid questions, and it was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it was the smartest thing I'd done too.
Yeah.
Because now I understand it's there's nothing wrong with you.
Right.
It's just the way that your body or your mind processes things.
Yeah.
And sometimes, oftentimes, you get overwhelmed with it. And if you don't take care of these things early,
It's gonna get worse.
they will come back.
Yep.
They will come back. This proof positive right here. They will come back on you. And Pandora's box that you have in the back of your mind will unleash all those demons,
Right.
all those things you suppressed over the years or hours or whatever it may be, and they will come at you at all angles.
I agree. 100%
And
agree.
there's really no way to prepare for that. But the only way I could think of is if you think you have some issues, address them now.
Right.
Don't wait till they ferment and get worse. They're
Right.
not going to get better. Chances are they will get worse.
Mm-hmm.
So take the time to take care of yourself. Nobody else is going to do it for you.
Exactly.
Nobody. But make that call to whomever it may be. Um, make that call.
Mm-hmm.
I can't reiterate that enough. Reach
Right.
out. You can contact myself, you can contact Chris. And that's just two people out of a gajillion people out here you can reach
There's
out to.
so many people that care about you guys, and it's just, I try to reiterate this every podcast that I record with you guys, and always want to express that you are loved and that you are enough, man. There are, like, Jeff said, there are so many resources and so many people that care about you, and please, please, please do not be afraid to reach out, because the first thing to healing is talking about it. Having this conversation can go so far, even if it's just saying that you're not okay. I'm not asking you to tell your whole life story and what you're struggling with. Just say, hey, I'm not okay, and we can figure it out from there.
You'll be
you know
surprised. You will be
yeah.
surprised the resources that we could tap into.
Right.
Uh, I've been doing this peer-to-peer support or peer support now since 2019 or 2020, I actually. And the only thing I want to do is I want to find you, that one person that's struggling, and that's who I want to talk to. I don't care if this, well, I do care in one aspect. Yeah, this podcast
Yeah.
reaches a lot of people, but I
Right.
want to find out one individual struggling, doesn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to provide you the resources you need to get your head back on your shoulders where it needs to be. And so you wake up in the morning happy again instead of dreading the next 18 hours till you get back to bed.
Right.
There are answers out here. There are solutions to the problem. Yeah. And we can help you there, but you got to make that call. We can't find you.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
We
and
can't.
I went to a concert on Thursday, and before the main stage came out, there was a rapper that came out, and one of his songs is called TED Talk. And one of the lines that really stood out to me was, if you're going to therapy, you have to be willing to put in that work.
Yeah.
And that goes on every level of healing, guys. And that goes with grief, that goes with channeling your emotions, your triggers. Nobody is responsible for your healing more than yourself. But like I said, all it takes is to have that one conversation to say, hey, I'm not okay. And it could go so far, and you never know the possibilities that are waiting on the other side of that brick wall that you find yourself behind.
Yeah. If you are struggling and you don't know where to begin and you don't want to make that phone call, do yourself a favor. Start a journal. Write
Yeah.
your thoughts down that day and do that for, let's say, 3 weeks. And to go back to day one and start reading again. And you'll be surprised what you find in that. I think a journal is really, really helpful. You list your good days and your bad days. And if you can't be honest with yourself, well, you need to work on that. You
Right.
need to work on that because this is going to cut right through that little wall you got put up. This will cut right through it like a hot knife to butter. It'll
Right.
go right through it, man. There is no defense against it. It's if it's going
Right.
to come at you, the demons in the back of your mind are going to come at you. They are going to come at you at the worst possible moment when you're least expecting it.
Agreed.
And the best way to take care of that is to get defense, learn how to deal with it, recognize the signs, recognize how you can improve yourself. If you're self-medicating or if you're using substance abuse or alcohol, take a good look at that. Take a good look at all those depressions lead to depression, which is going to even compound your problem even more so
Right.
and make it worse, worse and worse.
Right.
I used to be a drinker like no tomorrow. I mean, and I look back now and I've been sober for over 3 years now, and not one drinking episode solved one problem.
Right.
If anything, it created more.
I was gonna say the problems are just waiting the next day for when you're sober, and they're
Yep.
probably worse than they were the day before that.
Yeah, especially if you go out and screw up and don't remember what you did.
Yeah, yeah.
When you wake up in the morning, first thing you do is check your phone, who you called, who you text. That's a problem.
Right.
That's a problem. That is, and that
Um,
blackout drunks happened, and that's a problem. And I thought I had a control over it like that, but I didn't. It was my way of running, my way of running. And March 9th, when I did my final drink thing, I almost got in a lot of trouble. Almost got a
yeah.
lot of trouble with the law.
Right,
And
right.
I wasn't doing anything wrong. I got hammered drunk though, and I had a friend reached out and I was smashed, and she was worried about me. She called the sheriff's department to do checking the welfare. Well, I didn't really felt like I needed to be checked on. I was just peachy.
Right.
I
Right.
was 3/4 of a bottle into 10 cup whiskey then. I didn't give a shit about nothing.
Yeah.
And they hooked me up, took me into the hospital for an evaluation, which I didn't meet the criteria for, but I'm not trying to jam those guys up. They did a good job. I thanked them for doing that because they were worried about me. And looking back at it now, I would have been worried about me too.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would have done anything stupid, but that wasn't my call. I was impaired. And
Right.
they did what they had to do. I got out the next morning embarrassed. Didn't even come close to thinking about it, man. Embarrassed? Shit, no. I was hospital I saw knew me, the sheriff's office deputies and stuff and knew me. I've been in this county for a long time. And here I am, one of those people getting
Yeah.
hooked up in the EP, for the psychiatric eval.
Right.
And that's why I quit. Because I'm done. Because how much more of a sign do you need?
Exactly.
You know?
Right.
But yeah.
So before we close up today's podcast, where can everybody find you on socials?
You can find me. I'm on a couple different socials. I'm on Facebook under my name, Jeff Duer. That last name is Duer. You can find me on TikTok at Call Me Jeff, just Jeff. Or you can email me directly at it's the old guy at gmail.com. Now, if anybody
Perfect.
follows me on TikTok, you'll get that. All my videos start on TikTok. Hey, it's the old guy. That's me. Because, yeah, all right, I'll leave it out here. I'll be 61 the end of next month. I know. I look like 30. And
25, 25. It's all
there you
right.
go. You're a young buck, man. That's awesome. And I'm actually wearing a hat from a buddy of mine that was in the center with me. And I don't want to say his name. Well, yeah, I'll say his name. No, I'm not. But anyway, this is his dad. He gave me as a parting gift. So I like to wear it a lot because I think of him a lot. His name's Paul, and he's a good dude. He went through a lot of stuff too.
Yeah.
It's amazing that when you hear these stories that people have gone through and you look at it yourself and you compare yourself to it, you're not too far apart.
Right.
And I wouldn't have known this people being here with me like this or going through shit I've gone through too, unless I exposed myself. And by exposing myself, I learned a lot, and made me feel better about it. And I'll just say this real quick. There was a guy in a trauma class who was talking about he pulled up on a car accident when he was working and gets to the car kind of like looked familiar to him, and it was his daughter in the car,
Oh
and
no.
she was dead. And he was talking about the stuff that was going through his mind, the thoughts that had his mind, and Chris was like someone pulled my stomach out and threw it on the floor. I started crying. I curled up in a corner in a chair, like a little desk chair we used to have in school, and I couldn't stop crying.
Yeah, I bet.
And this guy was saying exactly what my thoughts were using his voice,
Right.
and it screwed me up.
Yeah. Can imagine, man.
It wasn't just me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a relief in one aspect because it wasn't just me. I wasn't just having these thoughts of my own. This is the reality of it all. And this guy who I've never even met till today, he was doing his exit interview, and he's saying shit's going through my mind. How did he know that? How did he know that's exactly what I've been thinking and what I was feeling?
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But I would have known that had I not taken the time to take care of myself.
Hmm.
Yeah. So there's the takeaway on that.
So at the end of every podcast, I usually like to read a quote, mental health based or depending on the guest that I have. Before I read that, just want to say, Jeff, thank you again so much for sharing your story with us. Like I said before we started recording, I thought your story was incredibly powerful and a lot needed to hear it. Especially working in the field that you have for as long as you have, and then also dealing with what you've dealt with, man. So again, thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me on board. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man. So this quote is by Nito. I'm gonna butcher this last name. Cubian, I believe is how you say it. And it reads, "Your present circumstances don't determine where you go; they merely determine where you start." And for me, when I first read that, immediately went to the saying that I heard within the last year is, "Life doesn't happen to you; it happens for you." And whatever circumstance that you're going through, whether it's a traumatic loss, whether it's relationship ending, whether it's whatever is going on in your life, it's hard to see it as it happening for you. It's hard to see it like that, especially when it comes to loss, guys. But your current circumstances don't define you as a person. It's how you come back that makes you who you are. So again, guys, thank you so much for listening. Jeff, thank you again.
Sure.
Until next time, guys, always remember you are enough, you are loved, and as always, be gentle with yourselves. Till next time, guys, much love.